Welcome to Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of Web3 security, compliance, and risk. Join Michael Pearl as he interviews executives from across the Web3 industry to uncover the challenges and opportunities of this rapidly evolving space. Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that focuses on everything security, fraud, compliance, risk management, centralized exchanges in the UAE, as you will hear in a second, and basically everything that is interesting in the Web3 space. And today we have with us the general manager of the UAE at Flipster, Ben Grolimund. Did I pronounce your name right?
You did pretty well. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the invitation.
Very happy to have you here. So, Benjamin, you have, I think, like 17 years of experience in leading companies across fintech and crypto. You've been working in Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa, and basically a very extensive background. Why don't you tell us about yourself in your own words, and eventually how did you end up working at Flipster? Basically, what does it entail to work there? What is your role? What are you responsible for?
With pleasure. Thank you. So look, I'm Ben. I'm French originally. Nobody's perfect, but I escaped France very early on. I actually never worked in France. Look, from a career perspective, I did mostly two things. I've always worked in fintech broadly. I started my career at Bloomberg, so really on the institutional side of banking, fintech for banking. Spent over a decade at Bloomberg. I then started my own company, still in the fintech space, but all of that on the TradFi part of fintech. And I moved across to cryptocurrencies when I joined Rain. And Rain.com is a regional cryptocurrency platform for retail and institutional customers in the Middle East. And I started my crypto journey as the GM of Rain here in the UAE. And I more recently transitioned across to Flipster. Flipster has ambitious expansion plans globally, one of which is obviously expanding into the Middle East with the entity that we're building out in Dubai. And this is why I've been appointed to help get it off the ground, essentially.
Got it. Very interesting. And some numbers and some details about Flipster, at least from what I was able to research. So it's a global crypto trading platform. You guys are offering 350 trading pairs, 100x leverage, which is very decent. You don't get that in Europe. Basically, tell us a little bit about Flipster. What I'm mostly interested in understanding is, for the average user, for a newbie especially, all exchanges seem kind of alike, right? And you have the big players, you have Binance, you have Coinbase, Kraken, and so on, and you have kind of tier 2, tier 3. I'm more interested in understanding what sets Flipster differently from other platforms. What is your unique proposition, whether it's regional or in terms of, let's say, unique products and so on?
Yeah, with pleasure. So you're absolutely right. It's not always very easy to differentiate exchanges from one another. I think it's clear who we are at Flipster in terms of DNA. You started mentioning the range of trading pairs that we have. We have 380, it's a broad number, around 380 trading pairs. But exchanges all have a lot of trading pairs. What really differentiates ourselves is that we are extremely focused on futures, mostly perpetuals. So we are a derivatives focused exchange. And we have those 380 pairs that offer derivatives, not just spot, up to 100x leverage. All the pairs are not 100x leverage, but obviously when the liquidity is sufficient, we're able to offer all the way up to 100x leverage. So that's one thing that differentiates ourselves is the range of perpetuals that you can actually trade on platform. We're also a platform that is heavily focused on the trading experience, where Flipster is an exchange for traders by traders. It has been built by quant traders. So the user experience that you have on Flipster is the UI is optimized for speed. It's optimized for instant execution. It's extremely efficient to use. The features are very optimized in terms of where they are in order to optimize for efficiency. There's zero friction trading. You experience near zero spread. There's no lag. It's just optimized for pure speed. So that's one thing. That's the second thing that differentiate ourselves. And the third thing I would say is that we have a very exciting earn program, and we're one of the very few exchanges that provide you yield on your deposit balances. Usually with exchanges, you only have yield if you take some of your assets and pledge them, especially in an earn program or in a staking program. Here at Flipster, every dollar that you deposit is you're generating yield on the back of it. So that's also one of the big USPs, and this is one of the reasons we've been highly successful. To put it in perspective, we've done 890% growth year on year. So it's a quite exciting place to be at, and we're growing very fast at this point.
Amazing. And I want to focus for a second. So you mentioned perpetuals and you mentioned futures and derivatives, which essentially means that you're not trading spot. I mean, you said that you do trade spot, but also
we do spot.
Yeah,
We do spot. It's just that our DNA is derivatives, and we cater to a crowd that wants to trade perpetuals. We have spot because it's part of the range of product and services that you want to offer as an exchange, but that's not our area of focus.
Yeah. So perpetuals is something that right now is kind of on the rise in the crypto trading space. It's been there for years in the DeFi space, but now centralized exchanges are kind of introducing that gradually. So we saw Coinbase obviously with their perpetuals product. Maybe you can explain a little bit for the sake of the listeners that are not really familiar with the difference between spot and futures, perpetuals, and so on. And maybe from the trader standpoint, so you mentioned that you have traders that are interested in that type of product. What's the difference? Why should they go for this or for that?
Okay, so I guess there's two questions here. First, what is a derivative? So a derivative product as a whole is a financial instrument that has an underlying, which is the cryptocurrency. If I take the example of Bitcoin, just to be clear, if you just want to buy and sell Bitcoin, you buy the spot product of Bitcoin. Now, if you want to buy a derivative of Bitcoin, we do mostly futures, for example. What you do is that you go into a financial contract. You can elect to choose a product that is a financial contract where you're actually betting on the future price of Bitcoin. Let's say Bitcoin is at $118,000 today. You can get into a financial agreement, a futures contract, where you're betting on the fact that Bitcoin will be at 120 tomorrow or next week, or lower at 115, for example. And so what you're doing is that you are getting into an agreement with somebody that has the opposite bet on the market than you. If you get into a contract for Bitcoin at $120,000, you are making that agreement that the counterparty of your future contract is somebody that essentially believes the opposite. So that's why you have a wide range of derivatives. The derivatives concept is not a new concept. Traditional finance markets have loads of derivatives. What I've described right now is a very simple futures contract, but you then have options and you then have exotic contracts, and there's a whole world of derivative contracts that exists. Now, the second question I guess you asked was about what's the difference?
What's the difference for the traders? Because now that we understand the difference, why should they choose spot versus derivatives, or vice versa?
Yeah. It's in regards of the exposure that it gives you. What derivatives give you is the ability to use what we call margin, i.e., or in other terms, leverage. So when we say that on Flipster, you can have all the way to a X leverage on those derivatives, what that means is that you can make a bet for a bigger amount of money you actually have, if I put it in extremely simple terms. So if I take, for example, a 10x leverage, let's say I have on my account $1,000. The ability to use leverage means that I'm going to be able to make a bet or to buy the future contracts for 10 times that $1,000, therefore $10,000. So suddenly I have a trading position of $10,000, which means that if the price goes up by 1%, I'm doing 10 times that performance that I would if I could only use my cash to buy spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, of course. I just wanted to clarify that for the sake of the listeners, because it's important to highlight that. So you said that you are expanding your global reach and that UAE is one of the kind of the pivotal locations. We keep hearing about the UAE, and we talked a little bit before the recording, and I mentioned that I was quite a few times in the UAE. I see that the local industry is scaling, growing, super successful. Quite a few countries are either setting up shop there or opening up branches. Why are you focusing on the UAE? Because just to kind of reiterate the question, it's quite a small market, right? It's a very interesting market, but in terms of, let's say, the population, you can go to other locations that have more population and perhaps more traders, maybe in East Asia and so on. Why is the UAE such an attractive location for crypto companies?
Yeah, so look, I think the UAE is attractive for two main reasons, and I'm sure we can discuss both. One, it's a very attractive jurisdiction to be in, to operate from as an exchange, and with all that this entails in terms of regulation and ecosystem. But secondly, it's also an interesting country to be in from a client acquisition standpoint. And maybe if I think your question was a little bit geared toward this. Maybe if I expand a little bit on this, why is it an interesting country or an interesting region to be in? It's because the Gulf region has a very interesting demographic. To give you just one number, 65% of the population in the Gulf region is below 35 years old. The GDP per capita in the GCC region is one of the highest in the world. So you have a young population, a wealthy young population that is technologically savvy. It's one of the world's highest adoption of smartphone per inhabitant. So you put all those things in one mix, and suddenly you have a very fertile demographic for cryptocurrency adoption. So it makes it an interesting and appealing region from a business development standpoint as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's for the market opportunity. But obviously, there's also the fact that operating from the UAE has a lot of advantages, and that's also why we're here. Let's be clear about that.
And if I may add, also, the UAE has a lot of talent. It manages to attract talent, tons of expats that are living there, operating there. So basically, whatever you need in terms of HR, basically everything is open for you. Many, many talented people with the huge experience in crypto.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I think there's three ingredients needed for a perfect recipe to success for exchanges to operate from. You need talent. You've talked about that. You can source that very easily in the UAE. You obviously need clear and complete regulations that you can operate within, and we can talk about that. That's a vast topic. The UAE offers this. And you also need an ecosystem. Never underestimate that. But for me, that's the third ingredient, because it's great to have clients. It's great to have an amazing regulation. But if, for example, you don't have the banks that want to support you, it becomes very difficult to operate from. Talking about the banks, but there's a whole myriad of suppliers and partners and vendors that you need, as any company needs, to be able to operate. So the ecosystem is also a critical component of having a successful hub.
Totally agree with that. And you've mentioned regulation. So, with
Yeah.
respect to that, not too many people know, but actually, the UAE and Dubai in specific, Abu Dhabi and so on, they have quite a few financial regulators, and some of them are also onboarding crypto companies. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Flipster with respect to which regulator have you chosen for being licensed with, and how do they differ from other regulators? Because not too many people know that you have this regulatory arbitrage, which in my humble point of view, I think it's very healthy for an ecosystem. So which one did you go with?
Is it healthy? I think it depends. I might differ on the opinion that regulatory arbitrage is
Please.
healthy, but but to answer your first question, you're right. There is now multiple jurisdictions around the world that have different regulations with different sets of rules, and those rules are either exhaustive. They could be, some regulators have a bit more of a patchwork approach or build brick by brick. Some of them give you a lot of visibility and transparency. Some are a little bit more hit and miss. Look, we've made a decision to apply for an exchange license with the Dubai regulator, VARA, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, mostly because there's mostly two reasons. If I want to summarize it, there's not 100 reasons. The two reasons are that the rule books are quite complete. It's not
Mhm.
just a regulator that regulates a small part of the ecosystem. If you see what the US is doing recently, we've seen the adoption of the Genius Act, for example.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong; it's amazing. I'm all in favor, and I think it's a super positive news for the industry as a whole. But the Genius Act is only looking at stablecoins. Uh, okay, stablecoins is an important pillar of the industry, but it's only one aspect of the industry. So the US at this point doesn't give you full clarity on an entire comprehensive cryptocurrency regulatory framework. VARA does. VARA
Mhm.
gives you the ability to run a business from A to Z. Actually, very recent news as well from VARA from this week only. VARA has just approved the first exchange to onboard retail customers for derivatives. It's never been done before, and they've done it this week. So they continue to also be at the forefront of how the sector evolves and how this and what the sector wants really. So they're also listening, and it enables you the clarity and the professionalism that a regulator such as VARA shows, enables you as a business to business, as a company to business plan. And that's often something that we underestimate. But look, over the past 15 years, cryptocurrency firms have been hopping around the world to try and find the right home.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. You can't really business plan if every 3 years you need to change your jurisdictions, hire new people,
Yeah.
start companies again, find new offices.
We all
It's
remember how CZ went to Malta and had this nice photo ops with one of the ministers there, and then eventually, later on he moved to Dubai and so on. So yeah.
Yeah. So that's what the industry needs to mature, right? You can't hop around forever. You need to find a home that gives you the clarity and a comprehensive rulebook or regulatory framework to enable you to actually business plan for the next 5 years and say, okay, these are the rules, they're clear. They're perfect or not perfect, it doesn't matter, but at least they're clear. And within those boundaries, I can open an office, I can hire people, I can plan ahead, I can do customer acquisition, and I can start being profitable. And I think that's what VAR gives you. Don't get me wrong, there's other very strong regulators in the Middle East. FSRA in Abu Dhabi is one of them. The Central Bank of Bahrain is another. At this point, I would say these are the three regulators that are at the forefront of cryptocurrencies in the Gulf region.
Yeah, and speaking of Vara, and I'm kind of segueing it into security. So recently they published. I'm not sure if it's a circular or basically a new regulation talking about security and compliance. And one of the things that they mandated was real-time monitoring, essentially, both for
Yeah.
security and for compliance, and also the response. So maybe you can give us kind of behind the scenes without, going into the secret details, but how did you guys implement that, and how basically are you mitigating that new regulation?
That's the right thing to do, by the way. Just to rebound on that before explaining how we're set up, I think the specificity of the crypto market, because it's a 24/7 business and settlement is immediate and global, you don't have a choice, but your compliance tools have to be real time. It's not like the banking world where when you do a wire transfer globally, it takes 3 days to arrive. The banks have the time to actually do checks and ensure that everything's correct before they approve wire transfers, for example. In the cryptocurrency, everything happens immediately,
Mm-hmm.
especially for settlement. So it's absolutely critical that we have compliance and security tools that cater for that market specificity. So from a compliance standpoint, look, we try to obviously implement the best in class processes and systems in order to ensure that, well, two things: in order to ensure the security of our client assets, which is our utmost priority, but also ensuring that we respect all of the rules in vigor in terms of AML, CFT, and that means using the right blockchain analytics, which are our biggest, I guess, ally in that process. And from a security standpoint, look, it's always a race against time. It's one of the biggest challenge of cryptocurrency exchanges, and we continue to see that there are cryptocurrency exchanges that get compromised around the world on a weekly basis. So I think that you need to approach that with a lot of humility. I think my personal view is that you need to do everything you can in order to never be compromised from a security standpoint, but also accept that you might well be. Because if there's an exchange that gets compromised every week, we're not smarter than them. They're trying to put the best security measures in place. So it's just that the hackers are very strong and they're very good. They're very creative and they continue to evolve and use new techniques. So I think the key here is to ensure that you don't condense everything into single points of failure. So that means that you need to ensure that you segment and you segregate a lot of your operations from a security standpoint, so that the day there's a breach, it's obviously problematic, but it's not life threatening.
Mm-hmm.
Always with, I guess, the objective in mind that we have two priorities from a security standpoint. I want to be very clear, in that order of priority is one, to secure customer assets. It's our utmost priority. And second of all, to ensure that the company will be able to survive from a potential breach. So look, we do a number of things. I think that the training of employees is the biggest single point that we need to continue working on, because a lot of those hacks, as we know, comes from social engineering hacks or some
Yeah.
kind of phishing attempt that was successful. So the human factor is often the I guess the weakest point from a security standpoint. So it is critical that we continue to do that, and we are somehow, and I think we should be somehow completely terrorized by this, and in the way we do operate our hardwares and our software and etc. We make it painful.
Yeah.
So it's a bit annoying to operate on a daily basis because you have all of those security steps. But look, it's absolutely critical that we do. We also pursue, and we've gained a lot of ISO certification from a security standpoint. So we use also external firms to stress test and audit what we do. So we don't just do it in our own corner. We try to understand if we're at the best industry standard possible. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of topics from the security standpoint, and I think it's a war that you never win, and it's a forever race to stay ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. First of all, so you said many things. I think that it's very, very kind of well thought of what you've mentioned, all the different elements. So, for instance, the social engineering issue is, as you said, we see that time and time again as someone that is detecting and trying to prevent those hacks. We see that time and time again, social engineering of individuals within the company. Sometimes it's an executive, sometimes it can be a very junior person that has
Yep.
access to the keys. So that's definitely crucial. I also agree with you that you need to have the right measures to prevent that. But what I have come to learn is that unfortunately, and just to kind of to tell you the behind the scenes of what we're doing, on a weekly basis we're calling founders and CEOs and GMs and telling them, listen, you've been hacked. And usually they don't even know that before we made the phone call, right?
Yeah.
So one of the problems right now is that the companies and the exchanges, and again, by no means I'm talking about Flipster, but just for a broader discussion, they don't have the proper tools to actually understand when something goes wrong. And I agree with you. There are ways to mitigate that. There are ways to basically, let's say, move funds or block some avenues that can eventually increase the drainage and make the problem worse. But the first rule for that is that you need to have proper monitoring and real-time responses. Because if you don't have that, you can find out that you've been hacked after a day or two, right? And
Yep.
that's also something that we see, and then it's too late. And basically, you have to be well prepared for that.
I fully agree, and believe me, I've learned that the hard way. During my time at Rain, we were hacked, and we lost $16 million during that hack. I can tell you that the trauma that leaves is a life lesson that you carry along for a long time. So
Yes.
I can only support what you just said. Yeah.
I'm very happy that you brought this up because we found out about this hack at the time and we haven't
Yeah,
published
I
it.
remember. I remember.
I know, so it's I didn't want to disclose that, but I'm very happy that you did. And again, it's very unfortunate, and I'm hoping that Rain, which is also a great company, I'm hoping that they
Yeah,
kind of strengthen their protections ever since.
absolutely. No, no, look, this is public information,
Yeah,
and you're absolutely right. It's a trauma when you live through it clearly. And I can tell you right now, because we've worked through this afterwards, Rain is 10
yeah,
times stronger today than it was before the hack, because obviously you react to what happened. But what I'm trying to say is that we need to learn from all of these lessons. The Bybit hack is another one,
hmm
to continue to ensure that it is our priority number one as an exchange. There's no other priority number one than security.
yeah, totally agreed. And one more thing that you mentioned earlier, and I kind of want to go back to that. So the Genius Act and what we're going to see
Mhm.
now, the influx of stablecoins. We can expect, obviously this affects more, let's say, the more kind of payment companies and payment facilitators. But I'm guessing that centralized exchanges as well are preparing for, first of all, having new stablecoins that we don't even know of, right? Because you're going to have a bunch of issuers issuing new stablecoins, but also much, much higher volume of stablecoins. So maybe you can give us kind of behind the scenes of how are you preparing for that?
Yeah, look, I think stablecoins has been the most interesting, and it's a personal view, but the
Mm-hmm.
most interesting use case of cryptocurrencies since the launch of the Bitcoin, in my personal opinion. We can obviously argue that DeFi is also one of them, but stablecoin has a real immediate effect on world finance as a whole. And we see now that it's not just a promise anymore, but it is actually happening. And we see that in exchanges, the volumes of stablecoin exchanged, the use cases for which they are being exchanged, the institutionalizing of those exchanges. When you see JP Morgan making plans, the world's biggest bank making plans to actually do a lot of those international transfers in stablecoins, you understand that you're not putting the genie back into the bottle. So I think it's amazing. I think the technology behind global money transfers that we use with traditional finance is way too old. I mean, we're still using Swift. Swift is a technology from the 70s, right? We're in 2024. Like, there's been internet since. So I think stablecoins is going to completely take over stablecoin in one shape or form, but blockchain-based money transfers are going to have already started. I need to stop speaking in the future because it has happened now.
Yeah.
Have started to revolutionize this. The last question now is: there's going to be a war between stablecoins. There's going to be like the first ones, such as USDT, USDC, the first ones to create the industry, and then there's going to be the new ones established by very large banks. Who will take over the lion's share of the pie is, I guess, the $1 million question at this point. I'm sure we could make bets on it. It's going to be a very interesting segment, a very interesting sector.
Yeah, totally agreed. Ben, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but
Sure.
it was truly fascinating, very interesting to learn about Flipster, about what you are doing there and your work at the UAE and in the GCC region in general. Where can we read more? Are you active on social media, LinkedIn, X, so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can obviously follow the Flipster socials. We're very active on Telegram, on all social media platform really. And for myself, yes, I have a LinkedIn profile. It's pretty simple. I've been very original. My LinkedIn profile is Benjamin Grolimund, so I'm very easy to find. Same thing on Twitter and on Telegram. I'm at Ben Grolimund, so very easy to find.
Perfect. Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for the invitation. Always great to have those fascinating conversations, and I hope I see you soon.
Pleasure.
Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.